We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
All the stories driving the media narrative seem to be taking place in the American courts, whether it's Ghislaine Maxwell, Jussie Smollett, abortion questions in the Supreme Court, or Biden's vaccine mandates being knocked back again and again. The spotlight is firmly on the judiciary. And there's no one better placed to cast away the shadows than host of the excellent Uprising podcast, Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, and man about town, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza, Esquire. Welcome back to Talking Liberty, Scott.
Mark, prognosticating about the courts is my business, and business is good.
It keeps us in bread and butter, doesn't it? Now, Scott, can you give us a brief overview of what significant cases or questions that have been tackled by the courts this week? Ones that have specifically piqued your interest as a constitutional lawyer, specifically those that had your liberty-minded spidey sense twitching.
Mark, I think that I've been reading more than anything else this week about the reaction to the Supreme Court's abortion case that they heard last week. And there's so much out there that says that the Supreme Court has signaled that they're going to overturn Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. I think that it's particularly amusing, what is the people's record who are reading these signals? I think that the justices were hostile to the pro-choice case generally, and that's fair reporting to suggest that. But to then suggest that you can then translate that into where they're going to rule. I don't think that anybody has a track record on that, on judging those signals that can be relied upon. I know that I myself don't. There's one or two justices who I think we can firmly predict where their votes are going to lie, and the rest of them, we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it seems more to me that those who are trying to explain which direction the court's going to jump, they're like the guys with bits of string and pins all around their apartments linking JFK and the moon landings. Now, it seems
the other thing that we have to consider, and I have to remind myself to do it, so I suspect everybody else does too, is to what the fundraising goals are of the people who are crowing about this are. So both on the pro-life and the pro-choice side, and certainly the pro-choicers are going to make a mint off of the speculation that they need the money to counter somehow this idea that Roe is going away.
Those emails are already landing in inboxes as we speak. Now, it seems that the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, rather than lasting the anticipated 6 weeks that was first prompted, it's about to come to a conclusion after just 2. Now, I think this surprises many of us. So what could prompt such a dramatic shift in the timetabling, Scott?
The only thing that makes sense to me, Mark, is that the prosecution thinks that they have proved their case sufficiently and that more evidence that they might present would not help prove their case, but may tend to weaken the case. That's sort of the only thing that really stands to reason as to why they would do that. They said to the court they thought 5 to 6 weeks for the presentation of their witnesses and evidence, and to pare it back so drastically, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's the best I can come up with. I told somebody else, Mark, that I'm not saying there's a conspiracy in place. I'm just saying that if you were doing a conspiracy to keep the public in the dark about this trial, that's exactly how it's being undertaken. I have never before in my history as a law student, as a lawyer, or as a journalist concerning legal issues, seen a court case that was more shrouded in secrecy than the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. It is remarkable. The witnesses, the exhibits, the testimony, all behind the closed doors and huddled conferences with nary a public view to be seen.
Well, we do fortunately get the crayon painted pictures that come out of the court. Now, it could, as you say.
Well, hold on, just if I might comment on that, Mark. Literally, the judge said, and I don't recall her name. I'm sorry to say, but the judge said to the courtroom artist, "Be sure and skew the details of the witnesses." So we don't even have accurate courtroom sketches of the witnesses who've been testifying. They're purposefully obscured or designed to conceal the person's identity rather than reveal what they look like.
But I think to your earlier point about the prosecution wanting to finish on a high note, as it were, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, let's briefly jump on to another topic that I'm sure many of our listeners and watchers are keen to hear about. It's the report came in that President Joe Biden commissioned that he initially asked for when he was then candidate Joe Biden into what can be done about the Supreme Court. Now, this report came out, and while it offers no concrete recommendations because that wasn't the remit, the burden of the weight seems to be against packing the Supreme Court. And I want to quote a brief excerpt here, Scott. Quote, "No serious person in either major political party suggests court packing as a means of overturning disliked Supreme Court decisions." End quote. Now, that's not quite true, is it, Scott? I've heard plenty of politicos say that court packing isn't the way forward. So is this report really just taking a sly knock at those who do, or are they saying that the politicians that do, which include many notable names, are not serious persons?
I would hope that it means the latter, but I don't necessarily think that it does. I read the report, and that section that you quote from is not language from the commissioners or whatever we call the members of the committee. I guess they are commissioners, but they're quoting from an academic who wrote some years prior. So it's not a nothing, but it's also not quite as bad as them saying it themselves. I think that there's very few of the commissioners likely who were proponents of packing the court, and that's why that language is in there, and that the report generally skews to denigrating the idea of adding justices to the court to either compensate for St. Merrick Garland's non-hearing that the left seems to be
the hearing
still
that never was, yeah.
Yeah, and also that Donald Trump was successfully able to appoint 3 justices to the Supreme Court.
So where does this go from here? I mean, they haven't made any concrete recommendations, but of the, let's call it the subtle pointers that are inherent within the report, it's clear that court packing is not something that they would recommend. It's not something that they view as pointed out by the quote, as a serious option. And yet, with the report's release, we're having notable Democrats already saying, well, it's clear that we've got to pack the courts. Where's the disconnect?
Mark, if I wear my strictly political hat, I would say that the smart move for those who wish to pack the court, and I think that's a bad idea on a number of levels. But if I did think so, I would say wait till the court rules in the Jackson Women's Health case, the abortion case that may overturn Roe. And if the court rules to overturn Roe, then I think you can have a more powerful political message to pack the court. In fact, I think it might be widely successful because there's so much really kind of free press on the positive Roe side. All of the big box media, legacy media sources and stories start off with the presumption that Roe is a good case, it's good for the country, and when they report about its potential demise, it's done so with condolences and consternation, not, gee, we're moving into a better direction without the burden of a bad case like Roe on the books.
Now, I think just to carry on with this court packing element here, I think a lot of people are a bit confused that, I mean, I certainly am, how this would work in practice. Because let's just say, for example, that, as you point out, let's say that the Supreme Court does rule against Jackson's Women's Health and Roe is essentially gutted. So now Joe Biden puts up some kind of constitutional amendment. Well, the Congress puts up some kind of constitutional amendment that expands how many justices can sit a bench. But then there's a 50-50 split in the Senate.
Let me just stop you right there. There needs to be no constitutional amendment to address the number of justices. The number of justices is not set in the Constitution. It's simply a matter of providing it under federal law and authorizing the payment of the salary, and then appointing and confirming the justice. And that's all that's required. There need be no constitutional amendment.
Okay, so that's really the element we want to look at, the appointment and confirmation of the would-be justices. How do they hope to do that when it's literally just Kamala Harris has the swing vote in the Senate?
Well,
and could it very easily backfire? Could it be that they put this into place and then the Republicans take control of the Senate in the 2022 congressionals, and then they could pack the court how they wish?
that's possible. The Republicans couldn't pack the court without an executive who would nominate a prospect that they like. So that's
those seats
certainly
could
not
sit
likely to
empty
happen
until there's another Republican
right
president.
And here's the other thing that you may not be considering, which is that if the court does overturn Roe, there are many people in the United States. I spoke with LibertyNation.com's senior political analyst Tim Donner about this on the Uprising podcast last week when I posed the question to him. You know, we have a lot of swing voters, these suburban women, especially voters in purpley kind of areas, who, when the economy is going bad under the direction of Democrats who are spending and taxing, they are more inclined to vote Republican. But on the social issues, they tend to more favor Democrats. And these people are generally neither hardcore pro-abortion or anti-abortion folks. But if they're able to be convinced that, you know, the Republicans are coming for women's bodies and with the handmaiden tale stuff and all that, then I don't think that, you know, it's wise to presume that the Congress would be so populated as you postulated with your hypothetical. I think it's more likely that there will be significant gains in Democrat seats in the Congress. In fact, I think that the best thing that could happen to the Democrats electorally is for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. That would, I think, really just be a huge boon to electing Democrats in the Congress.
Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark.
And that wraps it up for this week's foray into all things liberty. I'd like to say thank you to our esteemed guests, David Patterson, Tim Donner, Sarah Cowgill, and the constitutional uncaped crusader, Scott Cosenza. And of course, extend my sincere gratitude to you, the listeners, for taking the time to join us here on Liberty Nation Radio. A final thought to leave you with. Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote, "You only have power over people as long as you don't take everything away from them. But when you've robbed a man of everything, he's no longer in your power. He's free again." This is something our political leaders of all stripes should be wary of. When we lose the ability to work and provide for our families, to communicate freely without fear of retribution, be that societal or governmental, what does that leave us with besides our innate thirst for freedom? As governments around the world meet to discuss global cooperation standards, without input from the people, I might add, we may be coming to a point where the people are left with little but their own dignity. And woe betide any authority that tries to take that away. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.